All right, Larry Krueger here at Levi's for the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show as we do an update on everything that happened down here in Ninerland on a Wednesday. Check out Pig and a Pickle, 2 locations, Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. And this video also brought to you by Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles. They're at 205 Cypress Avenue in Pacific Grove, California, along the Monterey Peninsula. Go say hi to my good friend Anthony Catania. He's at 831-521-5264. All right, let's talk a little bit about all the different things that happened down here on a Wednesday. Kind of an interesting little soundbite on X from Mike Silver, who went on Barstool and told the story that Mike Shanahan had ID'd Brock Purdy as a good quarterback, as a quarterback that he really liked, going way back to his rookie year in minicamp.
There is something at 49er headquarters referred to as the Shanacam, which basically means Mike Shanahan needs to watch meetings and practice ASAP virtually.
That's awesome.
So some people think he's the shadow GM. I spent a bunch of time with him in May and June of 2022. And so in those conversations, I would ask about Trey Lance, of course, and Jimmy, and he kept talking about Brock Purdy because he'd seen some minicamp tape. And I was like, God, he's kind of weirdly into Brock Purdy, but, whatever. He's the 262nd pick. Now they open against the Bears. It's Trey Lance's first game as the unquestioned starter. The day before, I go to Mike Shanahan's room, and I'm sitting up there, and I'm asking him about Trey Lance, and he again brings up Purdy, and he says, when you have a guy like that in your building, you don't let him out. And I'm like, are we talking about, thinking,
yeah.
And, so he's still got it.
Yeah, this is why I'm saying, how is he not, Brock Purdy is a guy who it took him going to a Super Bowl for everyone to be like, okay, maybe he's actually really good.
Yeah.
And Mike Shanahan, before he even takes a snap in the NFL, is like, this guy is going to be good.
It's funny because that's also when I kind of really honed in on Purdy as looking better than the other quarterbacks. He looked better than Sudfeld. He looked better than Lance. He was completing all the drills and looking better than those two guys pretty routinely. And you heard Silver recount the story of how Mike Shanahan told him, hey man, we can't let this guy get away. This guy's too good to let get out of here. So it just kind of shows that Mike Shanahan is an independent thinker. He doesn't care about draft position. He just cares about can you play, and he felt like Purdy could play. The Niners made a roster decision today. They actually signed defensive end Shakel Brown, who was with them in training camp, to the practice squad. And of course, this is all related to Javon Hargrave with his torn triceps. He's done for the year. Brown's interesting. He's big, he's strong. He was signed May the 14th by the Niners. He was released on August the 27th at the cutdown. He's an ex-Tennessee Titan. He had some experience playing for Washburn in Tennessee, and obviously Jim Washburn and Chris Kasarik are buddies and run a very similar system, and so Shakel is back. I think it's very likely the 49ers will activate T.Y. McGill from the practice squad for Sunday's game against the Patriots, but you got to have more depth. Next man up means you got to, the guy at the bottom gets put in the game, and that's T.Y. McGill. And then the guy who was most recently cut, Shakel Brown, gets re-signed, and he takes that practice squad spot. So that's the way it shook out today. Brown's interesting, though. He's powerful. He's strong. He's got good quickness at 295 pounds, and he had a decent camp. So I'll be interested to see if he makes his way from the practice squad to the active roster at some point. It will probably take another injury or two. By the way, if you're a 49er fan and you're sitting there going, well, what are our chances this season? We're 1-2. History says you have a 25.9% chance of making the playoffs. History shows that teams that begin 1-2 have about 26% chance of making the playoffs, only 11.9% chance of making it out of the wild card round. It is worth noting, though, that no team in the Super Bowl era, dating back to the late 60s, has won a conference title game or obviously a Super Bowl. If you're not winning the conference title game, you can't win the Super Bowl. But nobody's won even a conference title game after starting 1-2. So are the Niners cooked? No. But if they do go to the conference championship game, which I would imagine is their goal, along with going to the Super Bowl. I mean, they want to obviously got to get to the conference title game first. If they make it to the conference title game, they will have done something that nobody has done since pre-Super Bowl era, and that's start 1-2 and make it to the conference title game. So that tells you how problematic that 1-2 start really is historically. Injury-wise, Deebo did not practice today. He's got the calf injury. Trent Williams called in sick today, so he was not in the facility. George Kittle has a hamstring. He was limited in practice. Javon Hargrave's triceps, obviously he's out of practice. D. Winters with the ankle also was held out of practice. The most important one was Brock Purdy was a full go. So he wasn't limited. He obviously reported the back injury. They had an MRI. The MRI was negative. Today could have been anything from, Brock's still feeling pain and it's soreness and stiffening and stiffness and, all this stuff. All these different things that could potentially happen with the back potentially could have happened today and would have kept his status very much in doubt for Sunday. Instead, he was a full go today at practice. I watched him go through drills. He didn't look any different at all to me. So Purdy, I would imagine, is going to start Sunday against the Patriots. That is probably the best news of the day. Kyle was asked if Christian McCaffrey will be out all season. And he just threw not that I know of, so we'll see. He's obviously, the last report is that he went to Germany to get, some obviously greater medical attention from specialists over there who might have a solution to his very painful, it sounds like, Achilles tendonitis. It is depressing when you hear that, though, because this is the best player on your team, and the fact that he's going across the ocean to Germany really tells you that he might think his career is at a crossroads. While I'm stating that, I have no sources that say that this is anything more than tendonitis, but there has already been speculation that maybe he will retire at some point this year. God, that would be an unbelievable turn of events if that happened. Knock on wood that it doesn't. I don't know if that's wood, that's glass, but you know what I'm saying. Nobody wants to see CMC done for the year. Nobody wants to see him retire. Everybody wants to see him get healthy and back on the field in short order. That's what the Niners want. We'll see what the future holds. I'll say this. Anytime you get on a plane and fly across the Atlantic Ocean, it's pretty significant. Does that mean that your career is hanging in the balance, that you could be forced into an early retirement at age 28? That's how old Christian McCaffrey is right now. God, I've got to think that's low percentage or low odds of happening. But it's worth noting. It's worth noting. Anytime somebody goes that far to see a medical specialist about an injury that's not healing, makes you wonder if if his career is hanging in the balance and he knows it. So it's all speculation at this point. Brandon Aiyuk, I think Matt Barrows brought up to Kyle Shanahan that Brandon Aiyuk leads the NFL in separation win rate, which is really surprising because he's really not done hardly anything. He was asked, and the funny thing is Shanahan was asked about it, and he's like, yeah, he's first he asked for clarification on the stat, and he's like, yeah, he pretty much looks the same. It was funny though when Aiyuk was asked about it in the locker room, he basically had no comment at all. He had no comment at all. Why? Because he knows. He's averaging 39 yards receiving per game. He has 0 touchdowns. He makes $30 million. You can bust out any freaking stat you want. 39.6 yards and 0 touchdowns are the only freaking stats that matter, baby. And those are the ones that count. So that's it. You either do or you don't. And so far, 39.6 yards and no touchdowns. So I would say he's not doing it right now, especially not worth that $30 million. He did tell us that teams are playing him differently, and he, believes that they know what him and Brock like to do, the routes they like to run. So I'm sure anything, it doesn't take a genius to think that anything 15 to 20 yards down the field that's in breaking, they're covering him like the ball's going to him because that's his route. That's the one that Purdy and him have really have hooked up on the most. I would say is that deep cross or the deep in route, usually, or the intermediate cross or the intermediate deep route. But when Aiyuk gets to 15 yards down the field and he wants to go across the middle, man, he is going to be covered because they've done it time and time again, and teams are onto it. So it'll be interesting to see how the 49ers adjust. The Niners have released safety Tracy Walker. That actually came down yesterday. So if you hadn't made note of that, he's been released from the practice squad. They were waiting on Hufanga to get right. Hufanga got right, and Walker is gone. There has been no timeline set for the return of Ricky Pearsall. He was shot on August the 31st. He can be activated as soon as next week, but no word if he will be or not. Juwan Jennings was named the FedEx Air and Ground Player of the Week. Man, what a game Juwan had. I mean, it sucks because it was in a loss and people are going to forget about it over time, but 11 catches for 175 and 3 tugs. That's pretty damn good for JJ. And the fact that, he didn't want to talk to the media after the game just kind of shows, man. What are you going to wrap yourself in glory, individual glory, as your team is falling apart at the seams? So, he even made the right move in the post game to kind of blow that whole thing off. So, and then the last note of the day is that today is John Lynch's birthday. And, first of all, happy birthday, John. And I told this story on a live stream in the past, and I've told it again this morning on a live stream on the Krug Show. Both my parents passed during the pandemic, and obviously I was very close to them. It was very painful. But they didn't die of COVID, but they died during COVID. And just one random day, my dad died in middle of December, and it was a tough. It still is really tough for me to talk about it. I don't talk about it a lot, but John Lynch, didn't know my dad, and John Lynch and I are not like social friends by any stretch, but he took the time to call me and voice his condolences, and I just really appreciate it. So happy birthday, John Lynch.